Welcome to Sports Love Media on YouTube. It's your guy Sports Love with the NFL Week 4 games, September 24th through 30th, 2025, my perspective. In this live stream, we will go over who is playing in each of the NFL games this week. We'll mention pertinent information regarding time it starts. I will go over the over-under and the margin of victory. I won't really be doing much in the way of detailed analysis, but once we go through that, then I'll go through and let you know who I think will win the games based off of just research that I've done. So let's get started with this. The first game that we're going to look at will be Seattle versus Arizona. That game is 7:15 p.m. on September 5th. Seattle is favored to win over Arizona by 1.5 or 2 points. The over-under is 43.5 or 44. On September 28th, you have a lot of games on that day. You have Minnesota versus Pittsburgh. That game is being played in Dublin, Ireland. Kickoff time is 8:30 a.m. Minnesota is favored to win by 2.5 or 3 points. The over-under is 40.5 or 41. Just a quick note, anytime I list any times, it's in Central Time Zone, so if you need to adjust according to your time zone, you can look at a map and figure that out, but the times I'm going by are based off of Central Time. Next, you have Washington versus Atlanta. That game is set to kick off at noon. Washington is favored to win by 2.5 or 3 points, and the over-under is 44.5 or 45. Next, you have New Orleans versus Buffalo. That's a noon kickoff. Buffalo is favored to win by 16.5 or 17 points over New Orleans, and the over-under is 47.5 or 48. Next, you'll have Cleveland versus Detroit. That's a noon kickoff. Detroit is favored to win the game by 8.5 or 9 points. The over-under is 44.5 or 46. You'll have Carolina versus New England. That's a noon kickoff. New England is favored to win the game by 5.5 or 6 points. The over-under is 43.5 or 44. Los Angeles Chargers is next in their game versus the New York Giants. That's also a noon kickoff. Los Angeles Chargers are favored to win the game by 6.5 or 7, 44.5 or 45. Next, also with the noon kickoff, is Philadelphia versus Tampa Bay. That game will kick off at noon. Philadelphia is favored to win the game by 4.5 or 5 points. You have the over-under as 43.5 or 44. Last of the noon games will be Tennessee versus Houston. Houston is favored to win that game by 6.5 or 7 points. The over-under is 39.5 or 40. Also on that day, you have Indianapolis versus the Los Angeles Rams. That's a kickoff time of 3:05 p.m. Los Angeles Rams are favored to win by 3.5 or 4 points over Indianapolis. The over-under is 49.5 or 50. And hello to you, Donkey Hobo. I appreciate you joining me today on this broadcast. It is appreciated. Let's see. Where am I? Philadelphia versus Tampa Bay. No, we already done that. Indianapolis versus Los Angeles Rams, 3:05 p.m. Los Angeles Rams are favored to win by 3.5 or 4 points. The over-under is 49.5 or 50. Then you have Jacksonville versus San Francisco at 3:05 p.m. San Francisco is favored to win by 3.5 or 4 points. The over-under is 46.5 or 47. Baltimore versus Kansas City, that's a 3:25 p.m. kickoff. Baltimore is favored to beat Kansas City by 2.5 to 3 points. The over-under is 48.5 or 49. You'll have Chicago versus Las Vegas, which is a 3:25 p.m. kickoff. Las Vegas is favored to win by 1.5 or 2 points over Chicago. The over-under is 48.5 or 49. For the Sunday night football game, you have Green Bay versus Dallas. That's at 7:20 p.m. Green Bay is favored to win that one over Dallas by 6.5 or 7 points. The over-under is 47.5 or 48. Monday Night Football will have a doubleheader, and in that doubleheader, you'll have the New York Jets versus Miami at 6:15 p.m. Miami is favored to win the game by 2.5 or 3 points. The over-under is 45.5 or 46. The second part of the doubleheader will be Cincinnati versus Denver. That's a 7:15 p.m. kickoff. Denver is favored to win by 7.5 or 8 points. The over-under is 44.5 or 45. So now here are my picks for who I think will win the games. And I will also tell you whether I will go over or under. So in the Seattle versus Arizona game, I'm going over the 44, and I have Seattle picked to win that one. On September 28th, you have Minnesota versus Pittsburgh. I'm going over the 41, and I'm picking Minnesota to win that one. In the Washington versus Atlanta game, I'm going to go over the 45, and I'm picking Washington to defeat Atlanta. For the New Orleans-Buffalo game, I am going Buffalo to win that game, even though they're favored to win by 17. I actually think that game is going to be won by 12, not 17, and I'm going under the 48. In the Cleveland versus Detroit game, I have Detroit winning that game, and I will go over the 46. Carolina versus New England, I have New England to win that one, and I will go under the 44. The Los Angeles Chargers versus the New York Giants game, I will have the New York Giants winning that one, and I'm going over the 45. Hello there, what's your name? Meh? Hello, glad that you came in today. Next game we have is going to be the Los Angeles Chargers versus the New York Giants. I'm going the New York Giants, and I'm going over the 45. Philadelphia versus Tampa, I'm going over the 44, and I have Philadelphia to win that one. Tennessee versus Houston, I have Houston to win that one, and I'm going over the 40, and I think 40 is actually a little low in terms of how they're valuing the over-under. Both teams are not known for scoring a lot of points, but I have seen both of them score more than that in a game on numerous occasions, so I'm not sure where they came up with that low figure. I am actually mentioning who is winning the NFL games, and I am mentioning who the pros think is going to win the games. I'm mentioning the over-under and where I'm going with that, and then I'm making my picks on who I think will win the games. Not necessarily what the pros think every time. However, it seems I've been agreeing with the pros a lot on this week's slate, but that's okay. Indianapolis versus the Los Angeles Rams. I have the Los Angeles Rams to win that one, and 50, I'm going under the 50 on that one. Jacksonville versus San Francisco. I have San Francisco to win that one, and I'm going over the 47. Baltimore versus Kansas City. The pros have Baltimore favored to win that one. I'm disagreeing with the pros on that one, and I'm going to have Kansas City to win. I'm not sure. It'll be by the same margin, but I just have Kansas City winning instead of Baltimore, and I'm going over the 49. Let's see. I have Las Vegas defeating Chicago, and I'm going under the 49. In the Green Bay versus Dallas game, I have Green Bay winning over Dallas, and I'm going to go under the 48. The New York Jets versus Miami game, I'm going Miami, and I'm going over the 46. In the Cincinnati versus Denver game on Monday Night Football, I have Denver favored to beat Cincinnati, and I'm going over the 45. Yeah, the Giants are a little crazy this year, but the Giants seem to be that team that causes everyone trouble within the NFL. It doesn't matter if you're the top-tier team or the lower-tier team. New York Giants is going to find some way to either cause the game to go to the very end, send the game to overtime, or lose because they can't throw the ball down the field quickly enough. And the New York Giants seems to have a problem with that. Yes, the Giants are starting a rookie quarterback as an established defense. You say you'll be surprised if the Giants score over 17. They need to be in the late high 20s to win against the Chargers. You know, actually, that sounds about right. But I think in regard to the New York Giants winning that one, I think because of the history between the Giants and the Chargers, the Giants will probably win. Now, I could be totally wrong on that, but I honestly think the Giants will still win. I mean, you can have a rookie quarterback and do better than some of the veterans. I mean, I've seen that happen more times than not. Your veteran quarterbacks seem to get a little cocky and a little overconfident, and they'll play the game through about the midway part of the fourth quarter. Then they let off the gas, and then what happens? They either lose the game, send the game to overtime, or they just flat out suck in the fourth quarter. So, and a lot of NFL teams do that for some reason. I'm not saying you need to keep your starters in the whole game, but you can't let up on the gasoline when it comes to how you play the game. And a lot of times these NFL teams do that. The Giants seem to be one of those teams that has a sputtering problem getting started early in the game, but then late in the game when it actually matters, they actually try to do something, and it is successful at times, but it's just a weird style of play. So I hope that answers your question about the Giants. But this week, looking at things, I think the Giants are better than the Chargers. What else would you say is the reason why you think the Giants are going to have a trouble on this one? If you don't mind me asking, Blooper. And no, to answer your other question, I am not putting out winning or losing. I'm just putting out who the pros think will win the game. I'm putting out the margin in which they think that's going to happen. And then I'm mentioning the over-under in terms of the total combined points scored. And then after that, making my own decision for who I think will win the game and my thoughts on whether it'll be more or less than the points that they list. The Graham... Well, what about the Graham Gano problem? I'm not sure what you're talking about. The Graham Gano. What? I mean, tell me about that. I mean, I do watch a lot of film and I do watch a lot of clips, but I try to keep the political things out of things. But what's going on with that? And why do you think that's a problem? And I'm not asking to be a butt. I truly am interested in your thoughts on that. Yeah, I heard. Okay, so now that you mentioned that, I did see that. Yeah, the thing is, I also think it will come down to a kicking battle. What I like about the NFL is if it's fourth down and you're in field goal range, they're not going to just try to go for a touchdown unless it's just late in the game and it's an absolute must. They're willing to kick the field goals and they're willing to take the 3 points if they can get it. But, kicking a field goal might seem easy to us being observers watching it stuff, but there's a lot of pressure on that kicker and stuff, and a lot of things can go wrong that we don't see. I mean, there are times when a kicker misses a field goal or extra point, and we think it's just because they suck. Some of that could be true, but some of it could be just the actual conditions on the field, the crowd noise. There's a bunch of factors that weigh into that we don't even look at. Yeah, I guess if you're going to have a kicking battle, that makes kind of sense on that. But I don't. How did he injure himself in warm-ups? If you don't mind me asking. Oh, he pulled his groin. Oh, yeah, well, when you pull your groin, you're going to have problems kicking or running or doing much else of anything else. I mean, I get that. So, but seriously, how do you pull your groin kicking a field goal in warm-ups? I could see it during gameplay, but how does that happen? Yes, Cam is a good kicker, but Cam also seems to be more confident than he truly is. He can do good with the long kicks, but he's not so good with the short, at least from what I'm seeing. Now, I could be wrong on that. He might have a good kicking record, but, a good field goal kicker needs to have good offense to get them down the field, and sometimes that seems to happen and sometimes it doesn't. If your offense can't get you down the field and get you in field goal range, having a good field goal kicker means diddly squat. But, he's got to do more than just kick field goals to win a game. He's got to help his team somehow. And when you say he's a top 3 kicker, do you mean based off of how many kicks he's attempted versus how many he's made? Or are you basing it off of how many yards he can kick from? What are you basing your top 3 results as a kicker from the league? I'm curious Because, I mean, you can rank that based off of how successful he is on completions and attempts or by how long he can kick. So, what are you basing your top three information on? I mean, either one is a good thing, but I just want to know where you stand on that and what your thoughts are. Okay, since we're talking the Giants and stuff, and you've been telling me some things, do you have any other thoughts on some of? Oh, I'm saying the thoughts I'm asking for are where are you basing your top three kicker in the league? Are you basing it on how many times he's kicked, attempts versus how many he's made, or are you basing it on how far he can kick the field goal and be successful? What factor are you using to determine his top three rating within the league for kicking? Because either one of those would make a good claim for that, but I just want to know where you are getting that from. Okay, I get you. So make percentage and distance. Brandon Aubrey, huh? Why is Brandon Aubrey or Boswell? Why are they good, in your opinion? Again, I welcome the comments and stuff, and I do enjoy this conversation. I'm just trying to figure out where you're coming from. In terms of make percentage and distance accuracy, yes, I can give you that on number three on that. So, yeah, but the thing is, in regard to indoor or outdoor and everything, I don't know if that's really a good statistic to go by because indoors, everything is climate controlled. You have a certain amount of wind based off of the air flowing in there. Outside, you're subject to the elements and stuff. And that's not really a fair comparison unless you have the same conditions for every game, whether they're all indoors or all outdoors. I don't think you can make a fair comparison on how good a kicker is based on how good he does indoors or outdoors. I mean, the only thing you could look at is how he does better based off of those conditions. Most would think that you do better indoors than outdoors, but you can't base a top three kicker based off of how well he does within both because that's not being consistent. But you can base it on the actual percentage of the actual attempts or the actual, making them, regardless of that. But you can't use the elements from inside or outside as a factor because the indoor facilities can make it controlled to a degree to where it would be perfect conditions. You're not going to have perfect conditions every time you play outside. Most of your games are indoors, but some are outside. So, you know. I don't mean to disagree with you on that, but if you're basing it off of indoors or outdoors, that's not really a valid argument based off of the fact that conditions change. Now, if you had a controlled environment to where everything was the same all the way through, then yes, that's fine. But outside of indoors or outdoors, if you're just basing it on how many kicks he's made versus how many he's attempted, which doesn't matter outdoors or in, then I'm fine with that. Oh, okay. So you're basing it off of both. I got you. So that's fair then. That's fair in your assessment. Um, yeah, yeah, and Romo really doesn't play anymore. He's an announcer and calls the games and stuff. How long ago are you talking about Romo? Because are you talking about Tony Romo? Because Tony's not playing right now, or if he is, he's playing limitedly. But um, oh, okay. So there's a kicker named Romo, not Tony Romo. Okay, I'm sorry, I got confused there. Tony Romo used to play for the Dallas Cowboys, and that's cool that he went 5 for 5 inside a stadium, inside, but put him in the same conditions outside, and would he make all 5 of those depending on what range he was kicking from? What range was he kicking from when he made all 5 of those field goals? Because if it's within his range and stuff, it doesn't matter if you're outdoors or indoors. Oh, okay. Well, I am glad for the discussion on that and everything, but I don't really pay attention to kickers unless it's coming down to the final plays of the game. Most of the kickers, I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of the kickers are overrated. Kickers are overrated unless it's for punts or for field goals late in the game. But if you're just kicking a field goal at the beginning of the game because your offense can't get you inside the 20-yard line and score a touchdown, that doesn't impress me. Now, what can impress me is if he can kick a 50 or 60-yard field goal and be accurate most of the time. So, you know, I mean, kickers have their purpose on a team, but again, you know, the only time that it really would matter is if it's late in the game and the game is on the line. That's when I start looking at kicking as a thing. You know, maybe in a situation late in the game to where you're trying to kick the ball and keep your opponent from getting, in scoring range. Yeah, maybe. But outside of late in the game or maybe even late in the half, a kicker is overrated. Although there are some good ones, but, show me a kicker who can regularly kick 50 yards plus and be successful. Then we'll talk about a good kicker. Otherwise, they're overrated unless they're used late in the game to win. And then I might reevaluate that. No, that's okay on special teams. You do agree that kickers are overrated, but the guys that go on the field right in and out, and you can't. Yes, I do. I do. I actually do understand your thoughts on that, Blooper. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with special teams if special teams is executed correctly. But the problem I'm seeing with special teams is teams tend to use them more than they should. Special teams is a good thing in a game and stuff, but again, a kicker kicking a field goal to make a game 3-0 in the first quarter does not impress me as much as making a field goal with seconds to go on the clock before the game ends, and you have to make the kick to either send the game to overtime or win the game. That's when I feel it's important. Other times, the only other time that kickers are really worth much are in punting situations. If they can punt deep down the field and keep the opponent from getting really far out in the field and keep them deep and in negative territory, then great. Otherwise, still overrated. Yes, I agree. If you've got a person that can go out there and do their job and be successful 87 to 93% of the time, then yes, regardless of the position they play, that's perfectly fine. What I'm meaning by the overrated is just as a general statement, but if you're basing it just off of them going out there and doing their job and being successful, that percentage rate of being successful is great regardless of the position, whether you're a quarterback, a kicker, a linebacker, or whatever. If you can do your job effectively and be good at it that percentage of the time, then you're pretty good. But most of the time, it fluctuates, and some people do better with pressure than others. Others not so much. So, I do appreciate your comments, and I do thank you for your insight. Again, I don't know if we may necessarily agree on how we look at things within football, but that's also part of why I do this on these live streams when I go over who's playing each week in the NFL. I like analysis, and I do like differences of opinion, even if I disagree with you. Because a lot of times, if you disagree, you usually have logic to back you up, and it's not going to necessarily change how I think on things, but it will get me to think on things. So that I do appreciate. 3-0 in the first quarter means you could win. Yeah, that is correct. I have seen that a lot about 3-0. I think a field goal can, in the NFL, a field goal can easily decide a game for a team. Early on, it sets the pace and it sets the tone. So in that aspect of things, I would say the field goal kicker is important. However, You look at any other league and stuff, just because someone goes up 3-0 doesn't mean that's going to actually be what ends up being the result. Because in other levels of football, I've seen a team start off with 3-0 and still find a way to lose the game 64-3, with that only 3 points being that early field goal. So yeah, so yes, you say a field goal early could decide the game given the team. If the Browns rely on their kicks this year, they'll lose 7 games. Yeah, that's correct. I believe they may lose more than 7 games because, honestly, this year, from what I've seen so far, the Browns have not been very successful in kicking field goals, and it shows. The bad teams can rely on it if they're effective with it, but most of your bad teams are still bad regardless of the field goals because they can't do anything else. I think, teams like the Chiefs or the Ravens or even Philadelphia and stuff, field goal kicking is good and it can set the tone, and those are your teams that you can count on to make a field goal happen when really nothing is there. So, yes, I agree with you. In some cases, field goal kicking is important and it can set the tone. But when you have terrible teams, I'm not going to name all the terrible teams. We all know who the NFL teams are that are flat out terrible. And it's not just the Browns. There are other teams that are they're so terrible they downright suck, but I don't want to call out any particular team. But we know who they are. And yes, that is one thing we can agree on. All other leagues like college football, a field goal doesn't matter early in the game. Football is the game of inches, and the better the kicker, the more you can. That is true. That is true. But the thing is, a good kicker realizes that. But a team should not rely just on the kicker to win games. Yes, I do agree that inches do matter when it comes to where you're placed on the football field, but if teams use a kicker as a means to win games, then it shows overall their offense is terrible because a kicker is like a tool. You cannot use that as your primary means of being able to win games. The only exception being is Air Force in college football. Air Force is real good at that, but we're not talking college football right now. We're talking NFL football. So inches is important in football and stuff, but a team needs to build around an offense and not rely just on the kicking, because if they rely just on the kicking, even the good teams are going to end up becoming terrible because other teams will pick up on that and they'll find ways to keep the kicker from scoring. So football is a game of inches, and I do get that. But again, I stand by my thoughts. Kickers should not be used as your primary tool to win football games. Now, it can be used to win games late, but that's when you use them when your offense is exhausted. They're doing everything they can to score, and they still can't, Yeah, and at that point, put your kicker in and maybe change the outcome of the game, but don't use them as a means to score every time, because in doing so, you find out who your terrible teams are. Yes, I do agree with that. Absolutely, 6/3 all day, but when you get in 3 range, you take the points. Yeah, I kind of agree with that because in the NFL, you get the 4th down and stuff. I have noticed that when teams go for it on 4th down, a lot of times they don't get it, and they could have gotten the 3 points and been done with it. So, yes, I see that, and I do get that. But I'm saying there are times, though, when it's like 4th and inches or 4th and an inch, and you still kick the field goal. I don't think you should kick the field goal at 4th down and an inch. Unless your team is so terrible that you can't do a quarterback sneak or you can't do the tush push, which is still legal, by the way, for now. If you're that close to a 1st down, do what you have to get that 1st down, but don't kick the field goal. Now, if you're like 4th and 3, 4th and 4, or fourth and whatever, and you're still in field goal range, then yes, I agree. Go for the field goal, go for the 3 points. But if you're literally less than a fourth of an inch away from getting that first down and you're at fourth down, go for it. Because, one, even if you don't get it, you're going to hold your team deep within the territory most of the time anyway. And two, it's very hard to cover a fourth of an inch, regardless of what side of the ball you're on. Yes, fourth and inches, you go for it. Fourth and 2, fourth and 3, or fourth and more, yes, you kick it. That I can agree with. Yeah, but the thing is, Detroit typically is not that good of a team. They're doing better this year. And yeah, there are some teams that can effectively do good on fourth and 2. But Detroit and a couple others are the exception. Generally, if you've got fourth and 2, fourth and 3, and you're in field goal range, I say kick the field goal and at least try to get the points. Some points are better than no points, but, I still think, though, that to be effective, that needs to be shown more late in the game and not just some middle of the game play that really is not going to matter much. That's just my thoughts on it. But anyway, I was just going to mention we will be doing these NFL live streams once a week on Tuesdays. I do not know the exact time of day that they will take place on Tuesday, but they will be done every week during the NFL regular season. I'm not sure how we're going to do the playoffs or the Super Bowl yet, but I'll let you know as soon as I know. Anyway, I do thank you for your discussion and stuff. It's made this conversation really interesting regarding NFL football today, and I do greatly appreciate it. If you will, please hit the like button, please hit the subscribe button, please hit the notification bell so you can be made aware of when I'm doing these live streams, when I have sports action videos, when I have sports education videos, again, when I broadcast live, or when I have breaking news in the sports world. You should do these Sunday mornings. There's a lot of... Yeah, I could do that on Sunday morning, but the problem is I don't have all my information and stuff. Are you talking about doing it on the day of the actual contest and not having to wait a week? Is that what you're saying? I mean, that would be okay. That would be something I could try to do, but that would be a little harder to do. But it's not saying I couldn't do it. Okay, well, then what I guess I'll do is I will look into that and see what we can do. So you're saying basically, like what I was saying, go over the games, who's playing, the same content, and just do it on Sundays instead of on Tuesday on the week in question. So like real early in the morning on Sunday morning. Is that what you're saying? Because you're coming into a thing to where you have international games, and those are at 8:30 in the morning. And so if that's the case, then on the days of international games, I'd have to do the stream kind of early. Is that what you're saying, though? Okay. I'll take you up on that challenge and stuff. So my next NFL stream will take place on, I normally do it for Tuesday. So for week 5, I will do that on an NFL Sunday. So on the day in question, and I'll try that for week 5 on NFL and see what happens. If it helps with the numbers, then I'll keep it like that. But if not, I'll go back to doing it on Tuesdays. I am willing to try that once. So I'll try that once and see what happens. And so for week 5 of the NFL stuff, I will wait until Sunday morning to do that. I'll go over that. We'll have a discussion and we'll talk NFL football, and we'll do it that way. Okay, well, all right. Well, like I said, if it seems to do well with that, I'll continue doing that on Sundays. But if not, then I'll go back to doing it on Tuesdays as I've been doing for the whole season. But I am willing to try that once to see what it will do. So Today is September 23rd. Let's see. So it would have to be for next Sunday. So it won't be Sunday. Well, let me see. Let me check. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So for week 5 of the NFL stuff, I will do it on Sunday of week 5 for NFL. The problem is the reason why I don't do it on Sundays is because you have the Thursday games, and the reason I do it on Tuesdays so that way it can include the Thursday game. That's the only reason why that I don't do it like that. I haven't done it like that. But do people? I mean, I guess people want something to talk about, and I guess what I could do is mention the Thursday game that happened and mention my thoughts on it and not really go over that Thursday game when I go over NFL talk on Sunday. I could do that. But that's part of the reason why I've been doing it on Tuesdays is so that way I can include in some of my thoughts on the Thursday games. But I'll figure something out, but for week 5 of the NFL, I'll do it on Sunday morning before the games even start on Sunday morning. And I'll see how that goes, even though the stream may be a little early in the day because I got to make sure to have enough time to look at stuff. Anyway, if you wish to subscribe to the channel, you can do so at www.youtube.com, the slash symbol, the at symbol, SPORTSLOV, or you can go on the YouTube search tab and type in Sportslov Media as SPORTSLOV Media, 2 words in the search tab. You'll know it's me because I have Sportslov Media burned into a basketball as my avatar. I'm also on Twitter X. My handle is at BobAmin16. That's the at symbol, BOBAMIN 16. That is true. And so, yeah, that'll be fine. Like I said, I will try that for week 5 of NFL once we get to that point, and I'll do it on an early Sunday morning. And I'll try that. I'll try it once and see what happens. And what I'll do is when I do the NFL-based stream, I will continue to do it like that. So, yeah. Thank you for the idea. I will try that once and see what happens. And we'll start with NFL Week 5. And I'll do that on Sunday morning. Anyway, I do appreciate each and every one of you joining me for this live stream today. I do greatly appreciate it. I hope each and every one of you has a wonderful day. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Well, if not, thank you for tuning in to this broadcast today. Sportslov Media signing out.